Okay, a researcher found the correlation between age of death and number of cigarettes smoked per day to be boom. So that's the R. That's the linear correlation coefficient. Notice it's negative. More cigarettes, lower lifespan, age or lower age of death. Based just on this information, the researcher can justly conclude that smoking causes early death. All right, this is another trick question. Causes. We cannot say for sure causation only from a linear correlation coefficient. That's not right. Coefficient. One, that just means this is false. It just means we cannot say causation. It an R value close to 1 or negative 1.0 or 1.0 means there's a strong relationship. Yes, for sure there's a strong relationship between cigarettes smoked and age of death. They're affecting each other, but we are not sure of causation. What do I mean? We're not sure. You said there's a strong relationship. Just because two things are connected doesn't mean necessarily one is causing the other. Now, of course, they have proven with tons of strong statistical evidence that cigarette smoking does cause a lower age of death. That certainly does. But we're answering the question in general here. No, and all I got to do is harken back. Remember a few minutes ago we had what was it? Oh, temperature. We looked at temperature and number of robberies, right? Remember that example we did a couple minutes ago? And we found that the line went up pretty good, right? Like that, meaning higher temperatures, more robberies. And they have a strong relationship, right? You write that in. Higher temp, that line went up to the right. More robberies. Higher temp, and I think that's true. I think if you take city by city throughout the United States, you'll find days with higher temperatures tend to have more robberies. Strong relationship. And the police need to know that. They need to have more people out patrolling on hotter days. But that doesn't mean the temperature's causing the robberies, does it? Do you see how silly that would be to try to determine causation? That would be goofy, huh? So yeah, the temperature is just causing the robberies. It's another outfall, another bad consequence of global warming, more robberies. Well, I mean, that there's a relationship there for sure, but we can't say the temperature is causing. You get somebody sitting in the house saying, I felt like being honest today, but then the temperature was just so hot, I just had to go out and rob. No, that's just silly, isn't it? Right? So just because two things are related, even strongly related, doesn't mean one is causing the other. Now you think, well, what's going on there? Well, the temperatures, if it's especially if you're someplace like, I don't know, Minnesota or Denver where it gets freezing cold. If it's freezing cold out, you're probably not going to go out and rob, even if you wanted to. You can't even drive your car down the road some of those freezing days, right? So it's not that the temperature is causing you to rob more or less. It's just enabling you to, right? It just gives you an opportunity to. Whereas if it's freezing in negative 20 degrees in Minnesota in January, nobody's going outside of their house, period, to rob or to do anything else for that matter. You see what I'm saying? Just because two things are connected, even strongly connected, even strongly linearly connected, doesn't mean necessarily one is causing the other. Well, how do you figure out causation? Well, we talked about that a little bit. Remember, you got to do an experiment. We talked about that previously. And we said you've got to, remember the tutoring example, you've got to set up an experiment where you have two groups. You randomly put people in two groups and you figure out which group, that's how you figure out if one thing is causing the other. It's more complex. It's not so simple. Just because two things are related, even strongly related, doesn't mean one's causing the other. They're just both connected. So that's a little different. So watch out there. to be a good consumer of statistical information.